Welcome, Corey Harris. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Richmond Sessions 2223. You're here as part of the programming for the exhibition Storied Strings, a Guitar in American Art, and this is a recording space in case those out there watching this do not know. This is a recording space within the exhibition. Again, it's organized by the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. The exhibition includes about 123 or so works of art and about 34 guitars divided into 17 themes ranging from politics, gender, and blindness to race and ethnicity. Linking these themes is the premise that the guitar as a visual motif has long enabled artists and their human subjects to tell stories that might otherwise go untold or undertold. So Richmond Sessions 2223 in turn is a showcase for contemporary musicians like yourself to record songs that demonstrate the power of the guitar as a means for telling stories, invoking universal themes, and weighing in on myriad events. Someone in the marketing department decided that the guitar is a storyteller's companion. Corey, do guitars tell stories, or do they rely on the player to collaborate with them?
Well, I guess you could say both, really, because as a guitarist, when you touch a guitar that's a vintage antique instrument, there's a sense that you can feel where it's been. There's a vibe on the instrument, and oftentimes when you purchase an instrument, that is the value, the allure of it is that, well, it was owned by such and such a musician, or I was looking recently at an article about the journeys of Booker White's guitar and the different people who had purchased this national Resophonic guitar from the 1930s, and just the celebrity that you could get from just having owned the guitar. If you were someone who was unknown, if you just had owned the guitar, it's like, well,
right.
But then also, it's true. The latter is true also because, we can use whatever instrument we have at our disposal to tell a story. It doesn't even have to be the guitar, The main thing is that we have a story to tell. We have an experience that we want to relate to someone else, and the guitar is the vehicle, the instrument.
Sure.
But it could be a coffee can, It could be a jug band. It could be different things,
I was reminded as you were speaking of this guitar built by Wayne Henderson, this OM18 guitar that the late Robin Thompson, who you probably knew, who commissioned this as an homage to the Commonwealth. But a lot of the walnut comes from Mount Vernon. The Appalachian red spruce comes from White Top, Virginia. There was also from the same tree that was used in the storied Eric Clapton guitar. So it's sort of like Clapton's cousin in a sense. I'm not sure. And the femur of a black bear found in Hot Springs, Virginia, provide the nut in the saddle here. And so when you look at something, when you play a guitar like that, wow, you're tapping into all kinds of histories and everything. Tell me about the guitar that you brought.
This guitar is actually from Western North Carolina. It's made by Bob Gernandt, Gernandt. His website is, I believe it's gernandt.com. And Bob is a small luthier, but very well known in his area, really nationwide, and produces mainly for the old time and bluegrass community. So he makes not only parlor guitars like this, but dulcimers, mandolins, different types of flat top guitars, arch top guitars. Yeah, so this is, as I said, the parlor guitar that he makes, and I've had this for about 13 years. I bought it at Merle Fest when I was down there.
Wonderful.
I played it, and that was it. Had to have it.
Do you record and gig with this?
I do. This is my main guitar for many years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about the song Catfish Blues?
Well, Robert Petway, from what I know, wrote the song. Robert Petway, not so well-known artist. I believe he was from Arkansas. Played a lot with Tommy McLennan. And that song, I believe he recorded it back in the 30s, if I'm not mistaken. But the version that most people are aware of is Muddy Waters' version, and then I believe, of course, Hendrix did a version.
I was going to say, yeah.
But for me, it was Muddy's version I heard first. But of course, Robert Petway's version is acoustic. And as far as the lyrics go, it's a boasting song. It's a song boasting about masculinity, about sexuality, about allure.
So will you play that for us?
Of course.
Thank you so much. Playing on the Wayne Henderson guitar that we're so grateful to have here.
was a catfish, swim in the long, deep blue sea. I've had all you good looking men fishing after me, fishing after me, fishing after me, fishing after me. Well, my mama told my father on the day I was born, I got a boy child come and gone. Be a son of a gun, be a son of a gun, be a son of a gun, be a son of a gun. I went to my baby house and I sit down on her step. She said, now come on in now, young man. My old man just left. My old man just left. My old man just left.
Wow, that was great. Thanks so much for sharing that song with us. I like, and there's so many identifying aspects of the genre of the blues there. One of them is that the entire song's in E major, which I love, but of course the introduction of the G to that kind of gives it a little, I don't know what the right word is, a little bit of crunch, and you do that both on the low E and on the G string itself. And what's really interesting too, another blues thing, is that your voice follows the notes. It's as if you and the guitar are singing together.
Yeah, that's vital. Gotta have that.
Would you say that in most of the songs you play, there's some element of that to one extent or another?
That's what I strive for, yeah.
And what does that do to sing with the guitar?
Well, you know,
as opposed to just singing over chords.
It adds to the narration, to the feeling of commentary, of conversation in the music. Yeah.
Right. So it's not just you.
Right. So it's not just me, and so it's adds to the sense that this is, even though it's one person giving the message, it's a dialogue that we're all a part of.
So guitars, just to be a master of the obvious here, guitars are ways to provide means for sharing dialogues.
Most definitely so. And what's even better is they're portable.
Right.
You know, unlike a piano you can take a piano somewhere, but it takes a lot of investment in time and energy, you know, same way with a bass, you know, so.
Yeah. It can have amplification, but does not need it.
Does not need it at all. And also you can even make a guitar. You know, there's how many stories have we heard of bluesmen who started out making their own guitars before they got enough money.
Sure. In your song Early in the Morning, and I don't know if you want to play that. It's not that early in the morning here.
Yeah.
The song says something like, early in the morning, I ain't got nothing but the blues.
Right.
And I'm curious, is the expression of that, is there something you do with the guitar in this song and songs like it that are go-to devices for expressing the a blues sensibility?
We guitarists call them riffs, you know, so bending of the string is evocative of crying. So yeah, that's a common motif that we use. Also sliding on the strings, sliding up and down on the strings, making a stop, and also hammering on and pulling off of the string. So just these various little micro manipulations of the string is how we relate the feeling of emotion. Yeah, but I would say it's really in the bending. That's probably the most recognizable sound of the guitar.
For those watching this, listening to this right now, who may not know exactly what is meant by bending, could you give just a little example here? So it's kind of like the inflection of voice almost.
Yes, it is speech, you know, and if we want to get historical, you know, we realize that the blues coming out of the African tradition comes out of a tradition of tonality, where languages were tonal, and even when their languages were taken from them, they still retained that tonality in the new languages, in this case, English, that they had to learn. And that's also in the music as well.
So the blues is very much a means of keeping alive African and other traditions, certainly.
Most definitely. The blues is, I would say, the foundation for ground zero for black music in America.
Yeah.
The 20th century for sure.
And I realize these are very obvious things, but I feel like they're not mentioned enough, to be honest.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah. How about 12 Gates to the City from your recent Insurrection Blues?
I'll try.
Okay.
All right. Hallelujah. 12 gates to the city. Hallelujah. There's 3 gates in the east, 3 gates in the west, 3 gates in the north, 3 gates in the south, 12 gates to the city. Hallelujah. What a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city. 12 gates to the city. Hallelujah. Have mercy. Oh, what a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city. 12 gates to the city. Hallelujah.
Wow, that's great. I want you to
Early in the
teach,
morning for that one.
that's is it ever too early for that? I want you to teach me to play that.
I got you.
That's really good. So that comes from your relatively recent album, in the Insurrection Blues.
Yes.
If you could tell our audience a little bit about what the Insurrection Blues is about, in case the name doesn't already give it away. And I'm curious to know how that gets on. Some of the tunes I understand good and well how they're there. This one, I'm curious if you could say a little bit about it too. It's more in the gospel realm.
Right. Well, I envision this record as a soundtrack to the inflection point that was the insurrection. So I wanted to include the, of course, the African influence. I think it was significant that this insurrection occurred on land, on stolen land, and land on which buildings that were built by enslaved people. And also the fact that the lynch mob is sort of like politically the go-to thing to do in American history when so-called democracy is not working for the majority. And so we see that in the insurrection. So the songs I wanted to include the voices of those people who, upon whom the United States project was built, the indigenous and the African. So that's really what you hear in the song, the track, Insurrection Blues, is that invocation of, should I say, African music in the guitar line, and also in the way that I'm singing it, you know. So yeah, that's really what the vision was with that record.
So 12 Gates to the City is more in a religious vein, obviously.
It is, yes. This is a song I picked up from listening to Reverend Gary Davis.
Yeah. What about some of these days?
Oh yeah, well, Some of These Days has interesting history. Those of us who know about the blues coming out of Mississippi, you know, Charlie Patton was a big name back in the 20s and the 30s, so he did this song, but it was actually a pop tune back in his day that he reprised, so. these days I am gone away. Some these days gonna miss your honey. Know you're gonna miss me, sweet darling. I'll be going away. Some these days gonna be leaving. Some these days I am gone away. Some these days gonna be leaving. Know you're gonna miss me, sweet darling. I'll be going away. You will never know what your friend will do till he's gone away. You will miss him from returning. You will miss him from gone away. You will miss him from returning. Lord, you're gonna miss me, sweet darling. I'll be going away. Some these days gonna be sorry. Some these days I am gone away. Oh, some these days gonna be sorry. No, you're gonna miss me, sweet darling. I'll be going away. You will never know what your friend will do till he's gone away. You will miss him from returning. You will miss him from gone away. You will miss him from returning. No, you're gonna miss me, sweet darling. I'll be going away.
I love that. That is so good. There are so many questions I want to ask you about this. Some of them have to do with the genre of the blues, but on a more technical note, when you say you will miss me, there are notes you're playing higher up on the fret. What are those?
Oh, well.
When you go, you will? Yeah.
It's really just it's an E major,
Yeah.
but just a inversion.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in the midst of the song, it almost sounds like a different note from somewhere else when you go up to it.
It does, yeah.
Because it is inverted.
Right.
I'm just like listening to you, taking notes and that. Can you talk about the role of percussion in the blues and in your musical practice as well?
Ooh.
I'm thinking in particular, knocking on the guitar and it's almost like your left, well, it's not a kick drum, but your left foot obviously is doing things.
Yeah. Well, as we know, the drums are a revolutionary instrument, and they were outlawed during captivity. And so, really, if we're looking at the United States, the only places where you had the drum where people were allowed by law to play it was Congo Square in New Orleans. And there was some drumming in D.C. as well, but the only place where for generations you had a tradition where people were allowed on a weekly basis to play drums was in New Orleans. Everywhere else, it was outlawed. And so you saw a preponderance of different types of music making, rhythm beating on different instruments. So there you see people playing jugs, donkey jawbone, washboards, spoons, bones, different things to compensate for the loss of the drum. And then also people playing the instrument, the guitar itself, as a drum, and then lest we forget, the banjo itself is a drum.
I'm glad you said that, because I think about South Carolina anti-noise laws and elsewhere, the obvious that the drum is, one can communicate.
Yes.
In code.
Yes, you can. The drum was a revolutionary instrument. If you want to enslave a people, you have to take away their culture. And so
And their means for communication
and
in the
the
first
means
place.
for communication, for transmitting that culture. And the drum was so dangerous because you transmit ideas over long distances and organize people, and so that was something. And of course, this was also something that was seen when Haiti had their revolution. Of course, people, planters in Virginia, such as Thomas Jefferson and others, were very much aware of the use of culture and the drum in that successful revolution. So they wanted to keep that from happening here.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about some of your influences, both perhaps some of them perhaps obvious, but some of the not so obvious influences that you that you bring.
I'm really influenced a lot by Delta blues, Mississippi blues, Texas blues, and also Virginia blues as well. I spent a lot of time with John Jackson, John Cephas, Phil Wiggins is a good friend of mine. We've played together many times, toured together a lot around the world. And also Mississippi artists such as people who are no longer with us, like R.L. Burnside. I toured a lot with him.
Yes.
Paul Wine-Jones, Big Jack Johnson. So yeah, those are the people that really influenced me a lot as far as those who I knew and actually got to spend time with. Also, I spent some time with Honey Boy Edwards, and we never played together, but we did talk a lot. And he told me a lot just about his time with Robert Johnson and, different things. And then I did a lot of touring with B.B. King. I toured with B.B.,
Right.
Opened up for B.B. around the world like 75 times.
Tell us about that.
Wow, well, B.B., what can I say? Like, it's really a legend, When you're around B.B., it's like you really feel like you're with a diplomat or royalty. Definitely so. And also his experience. I mean, this is someone who had the same manager as Louis Armstrong. So he would talk about him being in the dressing room with Louis Armstrong and Louis Armstrong cooking red beans and rice in the dressing room, and just hanging out with Bird. He came to New York when 3 O'Clock Blues hit, hanging out with Charlie Parker in New York City. It's like, wow, yeah. So B.B. was somebody who he imparted a lot of dignity to the blues. I think his contribution was that he wanted to elevate the blues to something of the level of the Ellington band or the Basie band, and so the presentation was always the suits, the valet, very classy presentation. And I think a lot of that had to do with him coming, and he talks about this in his autobiography, coming out of Kill Devil Hills, Indianola, Mississippi, coming out of such impoverished origins and always resenting people looking at the blues as being this backdoor, pull me sort of thing, So.
Yeah. Did you see wasn't Burnside's grandson playing at the folk festival?
Cedric, I didn't, but we talk every now and then. I run into Cedric. I've known Cedric since he was 19 and playing drums for RL. That's how we met.
Well, why don't we talk about one more song? As much as I'm loving this Wayne Henderson guitar, I'd love to hear your instrument too. Can we talk about, you spent a year in West Africa?
Yeah, I've been there many, many times, but I lived there for a year in my youth, yeah.
And about Insurrection Blues, I read this quote where you said that, so I wanted to make a blues record that talks about the word on the street. So the record, in a way, is a way to bridge the gap in the case of the song Sunjata, to kind of make Mali accessible and within reach of contemporary audiences here and now.
Sunjata is it's a very unifying song. Sunjata refers back to Sunjata Keita, who was the first king of the Manding, going back to the 12th century. Prior to Mali being an empire, it was a collection of small states, city-states, that each had their own king, and they were united by common language and common culture. but they were actually ruled over by Ghana. And so Sunjata Keita came along and he defeated Sumanguru, who was the emperor of Ghana at that time. Not Ghana actually was, the historical Ghana was actually where Mauritania is now, not where you see Accra is now presently geographically. And so, yeah, he defeated Sumanguru, and in so doing united all the different Manding kingdoms. But there's a lot of depth to this story because if I could just tell a little bit about it.
Please.
For example, we talk about the Lion King. This story is actually the original Lion King, where you have a figure who is born, his birth is prophesized, and then he is sent into exile because of the fear of his power. And so it was with Sunjata Keita. He was born, his mother was called Sogolon. And Sogolon, she was called the Buffalo Woman because she had like a deformity. She had a hunchback. And it was said that she would never have a child. But she had a child by the king. And this child was born with polio. Sunjata was born with polio. He couldn't walk. So all through his childhood, he was ridiculed, and she was ridiculed too. And then at some point, it became obvious that he was gaining his strength, and the story goes like within a week. First, he was like pulling himself up, then he was like standing, then he was like running, then he was hunting, and everyone's like, oh, shit. Sunjata's like, the prophecy's coming true, So he had to be exiled because he was, of course, a threat to the order. And so he went into exile, I believe it was in present-day Guinea. And then he came back and conquered Sumanguru. And the story about him conquering Sumanguru shows us the sacredness of the balafon and also how the eagle is held by the griot as being a very sacred animal. And the story goes that Sunjata had his griot who was named Balafaseke. And his griot was telling him, if you want to defeat Sumanguru, you have to play his sacred balafon, because Sumanguru was a sorcerer, and the source of his power was his balafon that he kept housed in a special place in his home. He was away on the battlefield, so Sunjata ordered Balafaseke to go to the house where the sacred balafon was housed to play it, to get the power from Sumanguru. And so as he entered the house, the hut where the balafon was housed, Sumanguru had left this ferocious eagle to guard the balafon, and his direction was to tear apart anyone who dared to touch the balafon. So when Balafaseke get in there and he starts to play the balafon, he plays it expertly. And the eagle doesn't move. He doesn't swoop down. He doesn't tear him up. He doesn't do anything. And Sumanguru was on the battlefield, but since the story goes he's a sorcerer, he has magical powers, he knows, he has an inkling, someone's in my place. Let me rush back home. So he goes back home and he sees this strange man playing his balafon. He's like, how are you able to do this? And he said, Koyante. And Koyante means we are of the same blood. And that is the name of the first griot clan, Kouyaté. So if you go to Mali, Guinea, Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, and you meet the Kouyaté, they're the first griot family. And you have other griot names. You have Diabate, you have Sissoko, you have Sise, different names, Tunkara. But if there's a Kouyaté present, all of these other griots have to, ask permission of the Kouyaté to perform griotism, to be a griot. So that's the story.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How does the song Sunjata tap into that specifically and pay tribute to Mali?
Well, Sunjata is the story of Sunjata Keita, of his birth, of his growth, of his exile, of his battle with Sumanguru, and of his eventual triumph and unification of Mali. And so it's a song that if you sing just the opening lines, of Sunjata, people will answer you because it's just like that well known, you
Gotcha.
know. Mande mogo sumara. If you sing that, mande mogo sumara mande kalu, you know, people know the song just like they know Happy Birthday.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Will you play that for us, please?
Yes.
Thanks. Corey, that's outstanding. Thank you so much. Before we wrap this up, can I ask, can you say a little bit about the history and the function historically and for you playing, and the name for that matter, of the stop action you're doing there? Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, I don't know if there's a name for it. That's a good question. But generally, you know, when you hear people playing in this style, they're trying to evoke the sound of a kora or the sound of a goni. Goni being the ancestor to the banjo, a resonating gourd instrument, you know, that comes out of Mali and Gambia. They call it the akonting. Morocco, they call it the gibril. Halam in different places, you know, but basically the ancestor to the banjo. So all those stops and those choking of the strings and all those things are trying to evoke the sound of traditional instruments, you know. And as I spent a lot of time with Ali Farka Touré, that's someone who did that a lot. He was always very much influenced by the sound of the ngoni and the sound of traditional instruments, so he was always trying to approximate that sound on his guitar.
What wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Corey, thank you so much for being our guest here. It's really been a pleasure. And I think that wraps it up here. So thanks, everyone, for watching this, and have a great day.